there's another set of atrocities that people often reference in tandem when they're, uh, you know, talking about the situation in Gaza not being a full blown genocide. And so one of those is the RAF and U.S. Air Force bombings of the Germans in World War II, where they bombed 600,000 Germans, and the US dropping the atomic bombs on Japan, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, killing 120,000 Japanese people instantly. People will say that we don't consider either of these genocides war crimes, possibly in retrospect, but not genocides. What would your response to that argument be?
Yeah, I'll answer that, but I'm just always curious about these kind of whataboutisms. When does this come up? When do people suddenly remember those things when they have to get off the hook for another set of crimes?
Yeah.
But
Well, I think
specific,
people also look at the numbers too, like, they'll
right,
say, and if you're taking numbers completely out of context and you're just
right,
comparing 2 atrocities as a numbers game, which, we spent the first 50 minutes of this conversation fleshing out all the context of genocide.
right.
But if you're just someone who, like, on ChatGPT goes, "Oh, 60,000 people dead in Gaza, find me, another atrocity where more people died," but
Mm,
it's not considered a genocide, and then it just, like, gives you a list of all these things. I think
right.
that's more of, like, the numerical line
Yeah.
of thinking.
No. Yeah. Well, I'm a historian, so I actually look at the context.
Yeah.
So specifically on this case, say it is true the RAF and the U.S. Air Force, in part because they couldn't bomb accurately at the time, and in part because they had a theory which was proven wrong, as it often does, that if they bombed civilians in Germany, civilians would rise up and topple the regime, which is usually an error. They bombed German cities, open German cities. They firebombed them, horrific firebombing of Hamburg, of Lübeck, of Dresden, of course, and they killed about 600,000 civilians.
Mm,
Um, and had the Allies not been the victors, and had there been a trial that they were not running, they might well have been facing war crimes allegations. M Now why is that not a genocide? All you have to think is what happened with the Americans and the British occupied Germany. What did they do?
mm,
They announced a Marshall Plan. Not
mm.
the British because they were bankrupt, but the
Yeah.
Americans
To
announced
rebuild,
the
yeah.
Marshall Plan to rebuild Germany. Why did they rebuild Germany? Well, they had political reasons, of course, because having you could say, well, the Germans carried out a genocide and more than one genocide in World War II, so why don't we do genocide on the Germans? And there was a few voices that suggested, let's make Germany into an agricultural country, which have meant the death of tens of millions of people. But that's not the voices that won out. The voices that won out said, first of all, we want a different Germany. We can have a different Germany if we create the conditions for a different kind of regime there. And they were also afraid of communism. So
Mm,
they thought that if Germany became a democratic state, it would become part of the West, it would become part of their alliance, standing against the Soviet Union, which took over all of Eastern Europe and Eastern Germany. Um, and indeed, European leaders, Churchill and Roosevelt in particular, often said in their speeches, we are not fighting the German people, we are fighting the Nazi regime.
mm.
The Americans did the same in Japan, although there was far more racism in the United States against the Japanese than the Germans in World War II, quite appalling racism. But when they came to occupy Japan, they actually helped Japan create a democracy and have benefited from it ever since. Now, had Israel said what would have been um, perfectly reasonable to do, had Israel said, Hamas attacked us. Hamas is an abysmal organization. It's bad for us and it's bad for Palestinians.
Mm,
It's oppressive, it's violent, it executes people, it demeans women. So if they said to the Palestinian population in Gaza, you help us destroy Hamas, and when we are done with them, because it'll be much easier for us to destroy them if you help us, we will help you create a different country for yourselves in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip.
Hmm.
Help us do that. There will be people will be killed, of course, it'll be a war. But at the end of that, we will help you create something that would be better for you and better for us, and will not allow such extremist organizations as Hamas to raise their heads again. But that is the nightmare of the Israeli government. The Israeli
Yeah.
government, the reason they don't give a day a sort of day after scenario, the reason Netanyahu will not say what he wants to see after is that the only logical ruler for Gaza after the war, which is no longer a war, is the Palestinian Authority.
Mm.
That means a unification of Gaza and the West Bank and the possibility of political negotiations between the Palestinians and Israel. They don't want that. So in that sense, there's a huge difference between the two, despite the fact that, of course, killing so many hundreds of thousands of German and Japanese civilians could have been seen as a war crime.
Hey guys, if you like this clip, there's a lot more waiting for you. Join the Zach Show 2.0 to unlock the full video and audio version of this episode, plus bonus content you won't find anywhere else. Exclusive AMAs, the entire back catalog of premium episodes, and the ability to submit topics and questions for future shows. Subscribe today at thezackshow.supercast.com. I'll see you there.